Imagine a world where a single cough isn't a cold, it's a death warrant, where cities fall silent in weeks and the living aren't enough to bury the dead. This isn't a movie. This was our reality. For centuries, humanity was one mutation away from total extinction. From invisible killers in our water to monsters hiding in our own blood. These are the 8 diseases that almost erased us from history. The plague. The most terrifying embodiment of that fear was the plague. It didn't simply kill, it erased existence itself. Entire cities fell silent. In Florence, Paris, and London, bodies lay unburied in the streets because there were not enough living people left to dig graves. Families abandoned their sick relatives in locked houses, marking the doors with crosses. Some towns lost up to 90% of their population in a matter of weeks. Caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis and originating in Central and East Asia, the plague traveled along trade routes, reaching Europe in the 14th century and killing tens of millions, in some regions wiping out over half the population. The symptoms were horrifying. Victims developed sudden high fever, unbearable headaches, and delirium. Black swellings, buboes, appeared in the groin, armpits, and neck, filled with pus and blood. Internal bleeding turned the skin dark, giving rise to the name Black Death. Many patients screamed in pain, hallucinated, or lost consciousness before dying within 2 or 3 days. But while the flea bite was the standard way to die, a deadlier, invisible version of the plague was evolving. One that could kill you just for breathing the same air as your neighbor. The Pneumonic Plague. No less terrifying was the Pneumonic Plague, the most infectious and lethal variant of the disease. While the bubonic form required a flea bite, the Pneumonic Plague was airborne, spreading through the simple act of breathing or coughing. Once the bacteria settled in the lungs, the victim's fate was sealed within 1 to 3 days. It caused a severe, agonizing cough that produced bloody, frothy sputum as the lungs literally disintegrated. Without immediate modern treatment, it remains nearly 100% fatal, often killing its host before they could even realize the gravity of their infection. It was this form that turned households into tombs, as every breath shared between loved ones became a delivery system for death. No one knew the cause. People blamed poisoned wells, divine punishment, or the alignment of planets. In reality, it was fleas on rats that carried the deadly bacteria. History records 3 catastrophic waves: the Justinian plague in the 6th century, the Black Death of the 14th century, and the third pandemic from China in the 19th century. Yet, while the plague killed with lightning speed, another monster was patient, hiding inside the human body for years, slowly consuming its host from the inside out until they literally evaporated. Tuberculosis. No less ruthless, but a much slower killer, was tuberculosis, known for centuries as consumption, or the White Plague. Caused by the bacterium Mycobacterium tuberculosis, it has accompanied humanity since ancient times. Unlike the swift-striking plague, tuberculosis could consume a person for years. Victims grew slowly pale, weakened, and literally wasted away before one's eyes, suffering from a debilitating cough with blood and night sweats. In the 19th century, tuberculosis was responsible for 1 out of every 4 deaths in Europe, claiming millions of lives annually. Historians estimate that over the past 2 centuries, this disease has killed more than 1 billion people. Despite the advances in medicine, tuberculosis remains a deadly threat today. It claims approximately 1.3 to 1.5 million lives every year. But there was another monster, one so visually horrifying that it didn't just kill people. It erased their faces and toppled entire empires before we found the world's first medical miracle to stop it. Smallpox. Another relentless killer was smallpox, a disease so cruel it reshaped human faces and entire societies. Caused by the variola virus, smallpox likely originated in northeastern Africa or the Indian subcontinent. Its global impact was enormous, killing an estimated 300 million people before its eradication. Infected individuals suffered from extreme fever, vomiting, and unbearable pain before their bodies erupted in thousands of fluid-filled pustules. The skin decayed, peeled away, and left deep, permanent scars. Many survivors were blinded as the infection destroyed the corneas of their eyes. Smallpox killed up to 30% of those infected, and far more among children. Entire royal dynasties were affected. Queens, kings, and emperors either died or were permanently disfigured. In Europe, heavy makeup and powdered wigs became fashionable, not for beauty, but to hide scars. In the Americas, smallpox devastated indigenous populations who had no immunity, killing millions and reshaping history itself. Only in the late 18th century did Edward Jenner discover that exposure to cowpox could protect against smallpox. It became the first vaccine in history. In 1980, smallpox became the first human disease officially eradicated. But just as humanity thought it had won, the 20th century arrived with a nightmare that ignored the old and the weak, and instead targeted the young, the strong, and the healthy. Spanish flu. In 1918, as World War I was ending, the Spanish flu emerged. Caused by the H1N1 influenza virus, it killed an estimated 50 to 100 million people worldwide. However, there is a bitter irony in its name. The Spanish flu didn't actually originate in Spain. The first recorded cases emerged thousands of miles away, on overcrowded military bases in the United States, specifically at Fort Riley, Kansas. The reason it's called Spanish is due to wartime censorship. During World War I, countries like the US, Britain, and Germany suppressed news of the disease to maintain morale. Spain, being neutral, was the only nation reporting the truth about the mounting deaths. Because they were the only ones honest enough to speak up, the world falsely assumed the origin of the disaster lay within their borders. Spain's reward for its honesty was having its name forever tied to the Great Scourge, the deadliest pandemic in modern history. Unlike typical influenza, this scourge targeted the young and the healthy. Soldiers collapsed in trenches. Entire families died within days. Victims developed high fever, muscle pain, and then severe pneumonia. Their lungs filled with fluid and blood. Faces turned blue from lack of oxygen. Some people drowned in their own bodily fluids while fully conscious. Hospitals were overwhelmed, coffins ran out, and mass graves became common. Yet, while the flu traveled through the air, another silent executioner was already poisoning the very thing humanity needs most to survive: water. Cholera. Cholera was another silent executioner. Caused by the bacterium Vibrio cholerae and first recognized in the Ganges Delta of India, cholera spread worldwide with expanding trade routes, killing an estimated 50 to 100 million people in repeated pandemics across the 19th and 20th centuries. Spread through contaminated water, it attacked the digestive system with terrifying speed. Victims suffered uncontrollable diarrhea and vomiting, losing liters of fluid within hours. Their skin shriveled, eyes sank into their sockets, and muscles cramped violently. Death often occurred from shock and dehydration before any help could arrive. Since the 19th century, humanity has endured 7 global cholera pandemics. But in the shadows of every great war, a different killer was lurking. Not in the water, but on the very clothes soldiers wore to stay warm. Typhus. Wherever war, poverty, and overcrowding existed, typhus followed. Caused by the bacterium Rickettsia prowazekii and transmitted by lice, typhus likely originated in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And during major wars, it killed millions of soldiers and civilians alike. It thrived in trenches, prisons, and refugee camps. High fever, rash, confusion, and heart failure were common. During Napoleon's invasion of Russia, more soldiers died from typhus than from enemy fire. In the aftermath of World War I alone, it killed an estimated 3 million people in Russia and Eastern Europe, until vaccines and hygiene measures appeared in the mid-20th century. Typhus was a constant companion of human conflict. But you didn't need a war or a famine to face a death sentence. Sometimes the deadliest weapon on the planet isn't a bomb or a bullet. It's a single, microscopic sting. While typhus haunted the trenches, this silent executioner was busy killing nearly half of the entire human race. It doesn't just infect you, it hijacks your very blood, forcing your cells to explode from the within. This is the oldest, most patient predator in our history. Malaria. If the plague was a lightning strike, this killer was a relentless, eternal rain. Malaria is arguably the single most effective executioner in the history of our species. Some evolutionary biologists estimate that out of the roughly 100 billion humans who have ever lived, nearly half, 50 billion people, were taken down by this one disease. It wasn't just a sickness, it was a biological filter that decided which empires stood and which ones rotted into the soil. Unlike a virus or a bacterium, malaria is driven by a ruthless parasite called Plasmodium. It doesn't just infect you, it hijacks your very essence. Delivered through the saliva of an Anopheles mosquito, the parasite first invades your liver, using it as a massive breeding ground. Once the army is large enough, it erupts into your bloodstream, seizing control of your red blood cells and forcing them to explode from the inside out. The symptoms are a cycle of pure physical agony. Every 2 or 3 days, the victim is hit by malarial paroxysms, a bone-chilling cold that makes teeth shatter, followed immediately by a searing fever of 105 degrees Fahrenheit, delirium, and hallucinations. As your red blood cells are systematically liquidated, your blood turns into a toxic sludge. Your organs shut down, and in the most brutal cases, the brain begins to swell, plunging the victim into a terminal coma. Malaria literally rewrote the map of the world. It decimated the armies of Genghis Khan, halted the Crusaders in their tracks, and for centuries acted as a biological wall that killed European colonizers faster than they could build forts. Our very DNA is a scar from this war. Sickle cell anemia emerged as a desperate evolutionary trade-off, a mutation that makes the blood distasteful to the parasite at the cost of lifelong chronic pain. We have been at war with this parasite for millennia, and despite our modern technology, the mosquito is still winning. Even today, in the age of AI and space travel, malaria claims the life of a child every 60 seconds. It is an ancient predator that hasn't retreated into the history books. It's just waiting for us to blink. But as lethal as this parasite was, it offered a quick exit. Our final entry was far more sadistic. It didn't want your life. It wanted your soul. It was a disease that didn't kill you quickly, but instead spent decades slowly erasing your humanity, piece by piece, until your own family treated you like a walking corpse. For this monster, death wasn't the threat. Death was the mercy. Leprosy. Leprosy, or Hansen's disease, carried not only physical suffering, but social death. Caused by the bacterium Mycobacterium leprae, and likely originating in Asia or Africa, it has afflicted humanity for thousands of years. While rarely fatal, untreated leprosy caused permanent nerve damage, deformities, and disabilities. At its peak in medieval Europe, there were over 19,000 leprosariums, dedicated leper hospitals, across the continent, built to wall off the infected from the pure. Because the disease could last for decades, tracking an exact death toll is difficult, but historians estimate that millions lived and died in isolation over the centuries. Even as recently as the mid-20th century, before modern multi-drug therapy became widespread, there were an estimated 10 to 12 million people worldwide suffering from the disease simultaneously. The physical toll was a slow disintegration. The bacteria damaged nerves, causing a total loss of sensation. Fingers and toes were lost to unnoticed injuries and infections. In medieval Europe, lepers were declared legally dead. They were expelled from society, forced to live in isolation, and made to wear bells to warn others of their presence. Fear and stigma were often worse than the disease itself. Today, leprosy is treatable. Plague can be cured. Smallpox is gone. Medicine has transformed the world. Yet history reminds us that humanity has always lived one mutation away from catastrophe. As the planet changes and new pathogens emerge, the ancient struggle between humans and disease is far from over.